Every child deserves to grow up in a world where they're valued for who they are, not judged by the color of their skin. If this story of a mother's fierce love and protection moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to injustice. Share this with anyone who needs to remember that no one has the right to make you or your child feel like you don't belong. What would you have done in Celeste's position? Drop your thoughts below, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrow world. This outline creates a 20-minute story of maternal protection, systemic racism, and ultimate justice while centering the dignity and worth of a Black child in a world that tries to diminish her. Focus on creating a natural flow that feels cinematic, conversational, and impactful. Write in paragraphs and do not suggest scenes or clips. Write in first-person narration style, capturing the emotional highs and lows. Make the audience feel every twist of fate and the impact of karma. Write on this section. Call to action. Intro. If you believe that no child should ever be made to feel they don't belong because of their skin color, smash that like button right now and subscribe. This story of a mother's justice will restore your faith that sometimes the universe does get it right. Trust me, this billionaire had no idea who he was messing with. Before I tell you how Isaiah single-handedly destroyed a billion-dollar empire to protect my daughter's heart, I need you to understand something. This isn't just another revenge story. This is about what happens when someone looks at your beautiful, innocent child and decides she's not worthy of their world because of the color of her skin. If that makes your blood boil the way it made mine, hit that like button right now. Do it before I even start, because you're about to hear a story that will shake you to your core. My 8-year-old daughter Luna has these incredible brown eyes that light up when she laughs, and the most brilliant mind I've ever encountered. She deserves to grow up believing she belongs anywhere she wants to be. But when billionaire Harrison Vale told me she would never fit into his elite world, when he made my baby girl feel small and unwanted for something as beautiful as her heritage, he crossed a line that should never be crossed. He thought he was just ending a relationship. What he actually did was declare war on the wrong mother. Subscribe right now, because this story is going to restore your faith that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe gets the justice equation exactly right. You're about to witness what happens when a man who built his fortune on diversity and inclusion gets exposed for the fraud he really is. You're about to see how a mother's love can bring down an entire corporate dynasty when that dynasty threatens her child's sense of worth. Hit that notification bell too, because stories like this matter. Stories about fighting back when powerful people try to make our children invisible. When they try to convince us that we should be grateful for scraps of acceptance while hiding who we really are. Harrison Vale thought he knew who he was dealing with when he started dating the quiet cybersecurity expert. He had no idea that this quiet woman had admin access to every digital secret his company had ever buried. And more importantly, he had no idea what a mother becomes when someone tries to dim her child's light. Trust me when I tell you that by the end of this story, you're going to understand that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making the most noise. Sometimes it's the woman who's been quietly building backdoors into your empire while you were busy underestimating her. Sometimes it's the mother who remembers every single slight against her child and turns that pain into precision-guided justice. This billionaire thought my daughter didn't belong in his world. By the time I was done with him, he didn't have a world left to belong to. My name is Celeste Rivera, and for 2 beautiful years, I lived inside a lie so perfect I convinced myself it was real. I'm a cybersecurity expert, the kind of woman who can crack encryption codes while making breakfast and spot digital vulnerabilities that million-dollar security firms miss. But when I met Harrison Vale at a tech conference, I wasn't thinking about firewalls or data breaches. I was thinking about how this brilliant, charismatic billionaire was looking at me like I was the most fascinating woman in the room. Harrison owned Vail Industries, one of the biggest tech companies on the West Coast, and he had this way of making you feel like you were the center of his universe. Within months, I was designing security systems for his entire digital empire while falling head over heels for a man who seemed to love not just me, but my daughter Luna with the same intensity. Luna was 6 when Harrison entered our lives. This incredible little girl with her father's Dominican features and my stubborn streak, plus a mind that could solve math problems that stumped kids twice her age. Watching Harrison with her was like watching magic. He'd spend hours building elaborate Lego cities with her, explaining how real buildings worked, treating her questions with the same respect he'd give to his board of directors. We lived like a fairy tale for 2 years. Private jets to destinations Luna had only seen in picture books, galas where she'd charm everyone in a tiny designer dress, quiet Sunday mornings in Harrison's penthouse where Luna would curl up between us while we read the newspaper. She started calling him Uncle Harry, and my heart would break a little every time, because I could see how much she loved him, how safe she felt in this bubble we'd created. But here's the thing about bubbles. They're beautiful and fragile and completely artificial. I started noticing things that should have been red flags. How Harrison never took us to family events. How his assistant would mysteriously reschedule dinners whenever his business partners wanted to bring their wives. How he'd get tense phone calls that he'd take in another room, his voice dropping to whispers I couldn't quite make out. I told myself it was because we were still new, that successful men needed time to integrate their personal and professional lives. I was building the digital fortress that protected his entire company, working 18-hour days to make sure Vail Industries was unhackable. While Luna attended the elite private school Harrison insisted on paying for, we were living in his world, surrounded by his money and his protection. And I was so grateful for the security he provided that I ignored the growing suspicion that something wasn't right. The first crack in our perfect world came the day Luna asked me why she'd never met Uncle Harry's mommy and daddy. I gave her some excuse about them living far away, but her innocent question planted a seed of doubt that would eventually grow into the tree that brought down Harrison's entire empire. Because, as it turns out, some lies are so big, they eventually collapse under their own weight. The day my perfect world shattered started like any other Sunday morning. Luna was sprawled across Harrison's marble kitchen island, her homework spread everywhere, while she worked on a science project about gravity. Harrison was making pancakes, something he'd gotten surprisingly good at over the past 2 years, when the elevator doors opened without warning. I'll never forget the sound of those designer heels clicking across the hardwood floor, each step like a countdown to disaster. Victoria Vale swept into the penthouse like she owned it, which technically she did through family trusts and old money. Harrison's mother was everything I'd imagined from his careful descriptions. Silver hair perfectly styled, clothes that cost more than most people's cars, and eyes that could freeze hell over. The moment she saw Luna and me, her face went from surprise to disgust so fast it was like watching someone flip a switch. Luna, sweet innocent Luna, looked up from her homework and smiled that radiant smile that usually melted everyone's heart. Uncle Harry, is this your mommy? What happened next is burned into my memory forever. Victoria didn't even acknowledge Luna's existence. She looked right through my daughter like she was invisible and started speaking to Harrison in this cold, clipped tone that made my skin crawl. Harrison, we need to discuss your upcoming merger with Chen Technologies. The board is concerned about your lifestyle choices affecting our family's reputation. That's when Luna, still not understanding the tension crackling in the room, hopped down from her stool and walked over to Victoria with that fearless confidence 8-year-olds have. Hi, I'm Luna. I help Uncle Harry with his computer stuff sometimes. Mama says I'm really smart with technology. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Victoria looked down at my beautiful daughter, this brilliant, loving child who thought she belonged everywhere because that's how I'd raised her. And I watched something ugly twist across her face. Harrison, Victoria said, her voice like ice. We need to talk privately. I should have grabbed Luna and left right then. I should have trusted my instincts that were screaming danger. Instead, I sent Luna to play in Harrison's office while the adults talked, thinking I was protecting her from an uncomfortable conversation. I had no idea I was about to witness the man I loved choose his family's racism over everything we'd built together. Victoria didn't waste time with subtlety. This Negro woman and her child cannot be part of our family's public image. The merger with Chen Technologies is worth $8 billion, Harrison. $8 billion. Do you really want to jeopardize that for some temporary infatuation? I waited for Harrison to defend us. I waited for him to show his mother the same strength he showed in boardrooms, the same passion he'd shown when he told me he loved me. Instead, I watched the man I'd given 2 years of my life to crumble like a house of cards. Mother, it's complicated. Celeste and Luna, they're special to me. But complicated isn't love, and special isn't family. And right then, I knew our fairy tale was over. The conversation I had with Luna that night broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. She sat on her bed, in her favorite unicorn pajamas, her legs swinging as she tried to make sense of what had happened at Uncle Harry's house. Mama, why was that lady so mean? Why wouldn't she talk to me? Her voice was so small, so confused. Then came the question that shattered my heart into a million pieces. Is it because my skin is darker than Uncle Harry's? Is that why I don't belong in his fancy world? 8 years old. My daughter was 8 years old and already learning that the world would try to make her feel less than because of something as beautiful as her heritage. I held her while she cried, and I made a promise that night that would change everything. No one would ever make my daughter feel like she didn't belong anywhere she wanted to be. Harrison called the next morning with his pathetic attempt at an explanation. Celeste, we need to talk about our situation. My family, the company, the merger. There are complications I didn't anticipate. Complications. He called my daughter a complication. Luna can't come to the charity gala next week, he continued, his voice weak and hollow. And maybe it's better if we keep things more private for a while, just until the business climate settles. That's when I knew exactly who Harrison Vale really was. Not the man who built Lego cities with Luna, or told me he loved my strength. He was a coward who would sacrifice anything, including the people who loved him, to protect his precious empire. But here's what Harrison didn't know about me. While he was busy playing Billionaire, I'd been doing more than just securing his digital infrastructure. I'd been learning it, mapping it, understanding every single pathway and vulnerability in his entire corporate network. When you're building someone's digital fortress, you necessarily know where all the weak spots are. That week, while Harrison was probably planning how to let me down easy, I was conducting the most thorough digital investigation of my career. Vale Industries servers became my playground. Employee records, internal communications, board meeting transcripts, financial documents, everything that Harrison thought was protected by the security systems I'd designed. What I found made my blood run cold. This wasn't just about one racist mother or one weak-willed son. Vale Industries had been systematically excluding minority candidates from executive positions for years. Their diversity reports were complete fiction. Their charitable donations included organizations with histories of discriminatory practices. The man who'd built his public image on inclusion and social responsibility was running a company that embodied everything I was fighting against. And there was more, so much more. Harrison's private communications with board members, discussing how to maintain their cultural standards while navigating the diversity problem. Videos from executive retreats where they joked about urban applicants and keeping the company culture intact. Luna deserved better than a world that would judge her worth by her skin color, and I was about to make sure she got it. The beautiful thing about being the architect of someone's digital security is that you know exactly how to dismantle it. For 3 weeks, I worked 18-hour days from my home office while Luna was at school, methodically preparing for the most comprehensive corporate takedown in modern history. This wasn't going to be some amateur hack job. This was going to be surgical, devastating, and absolutely undeniable. My first ally was Devin Brooks, a civil rights attorney who'd been trying to build a discrimination case against Vail Industries for 2 years. When I contacted him with what I had, the silence on the phone lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, he whispered, "Are you serious? You have all of this?" The smoking gun was a video from Harrison's executive retreat, where he literally laughed at a joke about keeping the monkey house clean while discussing hiring practices. The man who'd held my daughter, who'd told her she was brilliant and special, had been laughing about keeping people who looked like her out of his company. But I wanted more than just evidence. I wanted poetic justice. Harrison's Diversity Awards ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Vail Industries was being honored for their commitment to inclusive excellence by the National Business Coalition. 500 of the city's most influential people would be watching Harrison accept an award for values he'd never actually held. I timed everything perfectly. At exactly 7:30 p.m. as Harrison stood at the podium, talking about Vail Industries' dedication to creating opportunities for underrepresented communities, every screen in the venue simultaneously displayed his private emails, messages where he referred to diversity initiatives as necessary theater and minority employees as image management tools. The audience watched their hero's words about inclusion play on the main screen, while his real thoughts scrolled across every monitor in the room. The contrast was so stark, so undeniably damaging, that several people started recording with their phones before security could react. But that was just the opening act. While Harrison stumbled through his crumbling speech, Vail Industries' stock was tanking in real time, as news outlets received anonymous packages containing 3 years' worth of discriminatory practices, forged diversity reports, and recorded conversations between board members discussing how to maintain their demographic standards. The final masterstroke came from Luna herself, though she never knew it. Remember those innocent movies she used to make on her tablet when we visited Harrison's penthouse? Those adorable recordings of her conversations with Uncle Harry? Well, mixed in with her silly videos were conversations where Harrison discussed keeping our relationship secret, where he talked about Luna not fitting his corporate image, where he explained to his friends why certain types of families couldn't be part of his public life. My 8-year-old daughter's innocent documentation became the most damaging evidence of all. Proof that Harrison's prejudice wasn't just professional, it was personal. He'd looked a brilliant, loving child in the eye and decided she wasn't good enough for his world. By midnight, Harrison Vail had lost everything: his company, his reputation, his family's respect, and any chance of rebuilding what he'd destroyed. Justice had never felt so precise. The morning after Harrison's world exploded, I woke up to my phone buzzing with hundreds of notifications. News vans lined our street, reporters shouting questions through our front gate, and Luna peeking through the curtains with wide eyes, asking why so many people wanted to talk to us. Vail Industries' stock had crashed so hard that trading was suspended. The company lost $4 billion in market value overnight. Board members were resigning faster than they could draft their statements, and federal investigators were already announcing probes into the company's hiring practices and financial irregularities. Harrison's carefully built empire was crumbling in real time, broadcast live on every major network. But the part that surprised me most was how empty I felt watching it all unfold. Devin Brooks called that morning, his voice electric with excitement. "Celeste, we did it. The discrimination lawsuit just got fast-tracked with a federal judge, and we have 12 other companies asking if we have evidence of their practices too. This is going to change everything." He was right. Within a week, Vail Industries became the poster child for corporate discrimination, and I became the whistleblower who'd exposed it all. Magazine covers, interview requests, Speaking engagements, everyone wanted to hear from the cybersecurity expert who'd brought down a $1 billion company to protect her daughter. Luna handled the attention with the same grace she brought to everything else. When a reporter asked her how she felt about Uncle Harry, she tilted her head with that serious expression she gets when she's thinking hard and said, "I'm sad that he thought my brown skin made me less special. But Mama says that's his problem, not mine." Out of the mouths of babes, Harrison tried to reach me exactly once. The call came at 2 a.m., 3 weeks after his world collapsed. His voice was hollow, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. "Celeste, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I need you to know that I loved you. I loved Luna. I was weak." "You weren't just weak, Harrison," I told him, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "You were cruel. You looked at my daughter and decided she wasn't worthy of your world. That's not weakness. That's a choice. And you chose wrong. Is there any way? Can we find a path back from this?" That's when I realized that Harrison still didn't understand what he'd done. He thought this was about our relationship, about hurt feelings and broken trust between adults. He couldn't see that this was about something so much bigger, about a system that would have taught my daughter to shrink herself to fit into spaces that should have welcomed her with open arms. There's no going back from telling a child she doesn't belong because of her skin color, Harrison. There's no apologizing your way out of that. The line went quiet for a long moment, then barely a whisper, "I'm sorry." "I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo the damage, and it doesn't change what needed to happen. Some bridges burn completely. And that's exactly how it should be." 6 months later, Luna and I were sitting in our new office. Yes, our office, because my brilliant daughter had become my unofficial junior consultant. When she looked up from her coding tutorial and asked the question that made everything worth it, "Mama, do I belong everywhere now?" I stopped reviewing the cybersecurity proposal I was working on and really looked at my daughter. She was wearing a t-shirt that said "Future CEO," that one of my new clients had sent her. Her natural hair was pulled back in 2 perfect puffs, and her dark eyes held a confidence that no one could ever take away from her again. "You always belonged everywhere, baby girl. Some people just needed to learn that lesson the hard way." My consultancy firm, Rivera Security Solutions, had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Companies were lining up to hire the woman who'd exposed Vail Industries' discrimination. Not because of the publicity, but because they wanted someone who understood that real security meant protecting everyone, not just the people who looked like the executives. Luna would come with me to client meetings sometimes, charming CEOs and asking questions about their computer systems that made grown men realize they needed to step up their game. Harrison's story had a different ending than I expected. Vail Industries went bankrupt within 4 months, unable to recover from the scandal and the federal investigations. But Harrison himself, he surprised me. Instead of disappearing into whatever hole disgraced billionaires usually hide in, he started working with a nonprofit that helped formerly incarcerated people find jobs in technology. He liquidated his personal assets to pay settlements to every person his company had discriminated against. He wasn't trying to buy forgiveness, he was trying to earn redemption. I heard he'd moved into a 1-bedroom apartment and took the bus to work every day. The man who used to own private jets was learning what the rest of us had always known, that your worth isn't measured by your wealth, and that real respect comes from how you treat people when you think no one's watching. Luna and I never saw him again, but sometimes I'd catch news stories about his work, about formerly incarcerated men and women getting their first shot at decent jobs because Harrison Vail was fighting for them, the way he should have fought for us. Maybe that was his path to becoming the man he'd pretended to be all along. The charity gala that Harrison was supposed to attend the night his world exploded, they held it anyway, 6 months later, with new leadership and a new mission. This time, Luna and I were the guests of honor, not because I'd brought down a corrupt company, but because Luna had started a coding club for kids in underserved communities, teaching other children that they belonged in technology just as much as anyone else. Watching my daughter stand at that podium, confidently explaining her program to an audience of adults who hung on every word, I realized something profound. I hadn't just brought down Harrison's world, I'd helped build a better one. So here we are, Luna and I, building a world where no child ever has to question whether they belong because of the color of their skin. Every morning when I watch my daughter code circles around kids twice her age, when I see her confidence as she walks into rooms full of adults who respect her mind, I know that every sleepless night spent bringing down Harrison's empire was worth it. The question everyone asks me is whether I went too far. Did Celeste Rivera become a vigilante, or was she just a mother protecting her child? Honestly, I think I was both. I was a woman who refused to let her daughter grow up in a world that would try to convince her she was less than anyone else. And sometimes, being that kind of mother means you have to tear down the systems that would harm your child. Harrison Vale thought my daughter didn't belong in his world because of her beautiful brown skin. What he didn't realize was that his world was too small, too ugly, and too broken to deserve her anyway. We didn't need his acceptance, he needed our forgiveness. And while I hope he's found his path to redemption, Luna and I stopped waiting for other people's approval a long time ago. If this story moved you, if you believe that every child deserves to grow up, knowing they belong everywhere they want to be, smash that like button and subscribe. Share this with any parent who's fighting to protect their child's sense of worth, because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is refuse to make yourself smaller, to fit into someone else's narrow vision of the world. What would you have done to protect your child's heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and remember, you don't belong in their world. Their world belongs to you. Luna and I are proof of that.